Trish. Hi. Hello, Trish. There you go. There you go. Nice to see you.
Didn't need to be an editor.
I'm not ignoring you. It's just I've known her for longer. And this decade, I haven't gotten to pass my accolade on to you again, have I?
I don't think so.
She was the special education teacher at Ruggles Lane. And my son was one of her students. And when he was moving on to somebody else, he said, "Oh, she was my best teacher. I'll never have a teacher as good as she is." And I like to share that story about once a decade or so. So this is our time for these. When we get up to the 2030s, we'll do it again, okay? All right, good. I think you need to do this speech
I
about.
do. Good evening. This meeting will be recorded and will be posted to YouTube and other social media platforms. By participating in this meeting, you understand that the recording could contain your video stream or your audio stream, including images of yourself or anyone in the room with you if you choose to enable your video or audio device during the meeting, as well as anything or anyone else that may be in the background could be recorded. The recording could include any opinions you contribute and anything you say about yourself. On occasion, chat within the meeting could also be captured in the meeting recording. Therefore, anyone attending the recorded meeting may have aspects of their personal data recorded if they actively participate or not.
Those rascals. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, good enough. That's done. Now, we have a wonderful superintendent of schools. He's just not much to look at the moment. Because, well, you know, I give lots of presentations and I found using the language in an interesting way kind of helps focus attention. And so, anyway, I'm old. I do sort of think. She's at a town hearing on this, what's it called?
The intermunicipal agreement.
That's the one. And will come here with as much alacrity as possible once the town puts her away or she puts the town away or they both put the policy or agreement away. However, it needs to happen. And we'll start with the review of all of these little policies. Yes.
Like, so we have students here, you want to flip things around so they don't have to sit through something, or do you want to work?
An excellent point. Flipping students first. That almost could be a double entendre, but you know, I'm going to go with it. So before we get into the policies, which football and non-football, we'll start with the Vermont non-football.
Hello, I'm Hunter Levere. I'm a student at Quabbin. That's why I'm here. So hopefully you knew that already. Me are one of probably 7 or 8 interns that had the great opportunity provided by Mr. Devine, Mrs. Salvador, the Innovation Pathways Program, and the fine people at FlexCon and Mass Hire to do an internship there. I interned in human resources, but it went beyond that. It wasn't actually much HR type of stuff. It was more, how do you organize, and particularly using the methods that they used on such a impressively large industrial scale at FlexCon. Their systems that we learned about were lean methodologies, which is what Toyota uses, which is what FlexCon has implemented to reduce waste and organize as best as possible. I am currently in the NJRDC program.
Oh, good man, good man. That's a great program.
Thank you, Dr. Allen, which at times requires a lot of planning. And FlexCon's internship experience helps me absolutely drastically with that. Whenever I have to do something or plan something, I always have the lectures that we were able to be given and the experiences that we were able to be given in the back of my head at all times. They were nice enough to every morning, well, not every morning, but a morning or two a week, give us a 2-hour lesson, the same kind of type of lesson that they would give to their employees about lean methodologies, how it works, how to do it, and how to implement it on the projects that we were assigned. And at times it was dull, but it gave me a lot of information. And they sent us home with a lot of information. They actually gave us a binder full of all the information that I meant to bring tonight, but I forgot, so I apologize for that. But that internship was fantastic. I remember I heard it on the announcement one day, and I kind of thought about it in the back of my head, and I dismissed it. And then I brought it up to Mr. Bergman just to see if he had any more information out of curiosity. And he encouraged me to go ahead and do it, and I reached out to Ms. Salvador, and I did not regret the 3.5 weeks of summer that I gave up for it. And I got paid, so
How much did they pay you?
$1,500.
That's okay. That's all right.
Bad.
Any comments or questions?
I think it's interesting that you said that you sort of ended up doing a lot of stuff kind of outside the scope of what you thought you were going to do. I think you'll find that as you go through life in different positions, that's more the rule than the exception. So it's a good first taste for you to say, oh, geez, I didn't think I'd be having to do this, but I guess I will type thing. I think you'll find that it's good to be prepared to do that kind of thing.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely.
It's interesting you talk about the goals and so forth. My father-in-law was Horatio Alger. He was a high school dropout, Long Island, supported himself playing semi-pro football. And he wound up as president of Mobil, the gas company.
Yes.
And he used to say, as you go through life and set your goal, keep your eye on the donut and not on the hole. And that sounds kind of capricious and cutesy, but that's exactly what I think you were saying, is that you learn where to put your energies, where to look, what to see, what to learn, how to, even if it's a bit boring, it's useful, it will be helpful, and you'll keep your eye on the donut and not on the hole.
And that's a fantastic story about a obviously fantastic man, and it kind of reminds me about, ironically, the story of the founder of Flexcon, who came from nothing. His father died when he was young. His father's family didn't reach out for much help. So his mother moved back to Ireland, and he grew up for a few years on a farm in Ireland, and he came to America, again, when he was a child, still very much wishing he was in Ireland with his grandparents, reminiscing about that. And when he got older, he had his first son with his wife, and they didn't have much, but they had enough in their savings account. And he took what's in their savings account, and he came home one day, and his wife must have thought he was crazy. He said, I'm starting a business. And he did, and it grew into Flexcon, and Miles McDonough, the founder of Flexcon, has still, even though he's been passed away there for a long time now, employees that never even got the chance to meet him still have so much respect for him in the sense of what he did and how he treated people and where he came.
See, that's a great story, but that's what this country is. That's who all of us are. Our parents or our grandparents or our great-grandparents came from somewhere else, had a dream, a vision, a need, a desire, wanted to do something, wanted to get ahead, wanted to make a better situation for their family. And where's the greatest place in the world to do that? It's in this country. And as a school committee, I think we greatly feel our obligation to try to help you and Luke and your comrades and colleagues to have the opportunity to do that. That's why we're all here. That's why we all spend this time. It's a wonderful story. That's good. And good that you took the time and effort to go ahead and do that. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate you guys having me here. I'm going to let Luke take the floor if there's no comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Colleen. Nice to see you. You get it through okay?
Yes.
Oh, perfect, all right. So,
please excuse my voice. I was just down at basic leadership training as a cadet aide, and I lost my voice.
You were projecting.
Yes, I wasn't coming down from the diaphragm, which I now know. So if I need to repeat anything, just let me know. So this was one of the things that we had to do at PressCon was create a presentation for us to deliver to the CEO, CFO, and all other important figures at the end. Mr. Devine actually had the pleasure of meeting all of us. And so I had to start with a little bit about me, and I'm sure you guys have seen me in here talking about some of this stuff, so we just head on over this. So my blanking on the word right now, but which division of FlexCon I joined was Team Beta, and the role of Beta was pretty much to promote culture and to, as Hunter was saying, promote lean fundamentals. And what lean is pretty much how to make your business as efficient as possible. So, and what this was, success, there was a lot of emphasis on this. This is what our trainings were all about, success. So the first day was about sort, and the next day was about set, order, shine, standardize, sustain. So pretty much what this was is how to organize something and how to make a change and make it last. And so as a leader and as, you know, someone who wants to do a lot of good things for the school and in future, one of the things I lack is organization. And so when I saw that we were going to be learning about this, even though it wasn't exactly about culture and how to lead, as which I thought I was signing up for, as the donut, not the hole, I was very intrigued because this is what I needed. And coming into this next year with the things that I've learned from success, it really has helped my organizational skills. So, just a little background information. Beta uses templates during blitzes, and blitzes are company-wide events to fix a problem. So if they see that one of their slitter machines isn't working as efficiently as it could be, they will have a meeting and they'll talk about it for 3 days. And at the end of the 3 days, they'll come out with a way that they believe the slitter machine can work more efficiently, making more money for the company and be safer overall. Safety is the number one concern. So they use these templates to organize the planning and help them stay on topic, include each participant, as well as keeping their thoughts aligned all in one spot. Nice.
Did I skip one? No.
Oh, I guess not. Okay. So, okay.
Do you want me to
Called
see if it's
improvising.
ahead?
Improvising.
Do you think you might have? Okay.
So, skipping again here, some of the takeaways that I had were the deeper levels to each S and 6S, and that's what I just went into. And the work on the 6S program templates, I was able to understand how they use the templates as current state in the Angry Clouds. So what those were was when they were planning, they would have sticky notes. One would be an angry cloud and one would be a happy cloud. And so they would put angry clouds of what the problem is, and then they would put a happy cloud next to it with a solution of how they could fix the angry cloud. So if, you know, Hunter was kept dropping cameras everywhere, I don't know, something like that, he wasn't being safe, he would report that as an angry cloud. And then the happy cloud would be Hunter needs to stop on him. So this helped me learn and apply problem solving, build out a future state process. And also this last thing is, you know, a little humor, quality time with Ryan and Dave. They were the ones that put us through the training, and the clapping and the shout out was for them. Obviously you guys don't know this, but. So this is what the current state was. So this is more past state now, but when this was my task. So each of us had a big task that we needed to complete by the end of our time session. And mine was to organize the digital templates. So when they needed a template for Blitz, they would go to this database and print it out. And it would take hours, sometimes a whole day, to find one specific template. And they knew that this was total contradictory to what they were trying to accomplish here. Being lean and efficient, spending one day just to find one thing you're gonna use 10 minutes on. So what they needed me to do was to organize all of them and put them all in just separate folders for easy access. So as you can tell, there are many templates in many different spots. You know, I'm not sure if you can see this far, but it's all a mess. And you know, when I saw that, I was a little overwhelmed, but I was ready to go to work. So the problems with that last current state was you needed to differentiate between the old and current templates, and it was hard to find all the templates. And overall, it was very unorganized. If they did have folders, they were not conjoined at all. It would be what they used for a specific blitz or something. And the improvements, Happy Clouds, and how it built the future state process for it, sorting out, deleting, and renaming templates, creating a home for old templates, and creating template sizes and grid sizes folders. So, you know, all this stuff seems, you know, a little out there to you guys, I'm sure, because, you know, you don't realize or you weren't around the templates, but they use these every single day. And all of this stuff is pretty crucial for them. So the result was that I archived the old templates, categorized the templates by size, labeled folders for quick access, created a new template folder so that when they created new templates, they would put it there and then everyone would be able to vote on it if they wanted to keep the template or not. So this is what it looks like now. So there were 3 different places where you could go and take all day long to find them. And now they are labeled by print sizes. And now every single template that they would want is in each single one of those folders. So all they need to do is click, and then they will be where they need to be. This goes into the template red tag. So another thing about 6S is that they had a red tag, which a red tag area or folder was, they would put places that they weren't sure they needed. They weren't sure if they were efficient or not. And if no one came looking for it in a certain amount of timeline, usually it would be 3 to 6 months. If no one came looking for it, or if no one needed it, then they would get rid of it at the end of that time. And so this is the template red tag. And if no one needed the red tags, or if no one needed the templates, they would go into this folder. And then at the end, I created a system, me and Eric, as you see his name up here, we created a system for them to be able to vote on these templates at the end of their term to see. So each template is awarded a term when they go into the template red tag. So it's 3 to 6 months. If they are still in there at the end of that time, they will then get discarded or found a new one. So pretty much we set up the same system here. This is pretty much what I was just talking about. This was the standard work breakdown sheet. So this was the nitty-gritty of how that will get done. And I created a beta brochure. So beta is only 6 or 7 years old over at FlexCon. It's a brand new thing. And when they went into it, the way they marketed it or the way that they were received by some of the other employees were that they really didn't do any work. And that it was just a culture thing. It was HR that didn't have to deal with any HR. And now they're finally able to remarket and show all the great things that they've done over at FlexCon and how they've improved the lives of every single employee. So I spent some time making a brochure that they could send out to the employees to highlight some of their successes. And skills and knowledge gains. I gained a lot of organization, communication. I learned how to use Microsoft Teams, PowerPoint, and clear and active listening was the biggest thing. When you're talking to someone, sometimes you only get one shot to hear the directions. If you don't hear it, you're going to be lost or you're going to seem like you weren't listening. And so some of those things, FlexCon is very employee first, and they want you to know that you're doing a good job and stuff like that. But, sometimes you hold yourself to a different standard and you don't want to have to be like, I'm sorry, I know you just went over the whole entire time. So that was very big for me. And then also problem solving, when you're on your own, you don't want to go to your boss every 5 minutes. You need to make decisions and make them quickly. That goes into adaptability. And also, number one, I got real world experience. So the way that this slide was set up was this back here was the first slide, and then I would click a button, and then that other stuff would come up. But so that says organization, communication, and dad jokes. My boss was always saying dad jokes, so that was another humor thing I tried to implement. Special thanks to all these people. 2 of them are in this room, Mr. Devine and Mrs. Salvador. Never met her, but she did a great job. All these other people were employees and outside of Mass Hire, and they all, as Hunter was saying, they're all amazing people. And the things that I learned with them, I could never replicate anywhere else, even in ROTC, DECA, President, all these other things. It was just such a different thing, and they were all part of that. Questions?
Many members? Well, you were talking about dad jokes. I'll pass my dad. This is an old story. It's about the dachshund that died that is then going around a tree. You can use that one if you want. That's from my dad.
Okay. All right.
Just want to tie a little of this together. Teresa Salvador is here with Luke, and she worked all weekend long because she was a chaperone for the Quabbin cadets that attended the basic leadership training course this weekend in Newport, Rhode Island. Luke was there. I don't know if you went, Hunter, did you go?
I was there, sir.
You were there. How come you didn't lose your voice like him?
Well, chief people told me to project my voice, not from my throat, but from my diaphragm.
So you're better at
And you
following
listened.
instructions.
But they had the graduation ceremony yesterday afternoon, and Teresa and I had a quick conversation, and she said something that really struck me. It was her 9th year chaperoning, and she said that she really, really believes in the ROTC program at Quabbin. And what Hunter said and what Luke said, and what you said, Dr. Allen, and you, Mr. Little, and the idea that whatever you do with what you learn in ROTC, you develop these soft skills that you can apply anywhere you go, whether it's in the military or in in industry. So I think it's a wonderful, wonderful program, and it kind of completes a circle for me. And Therese, your dedication to this and to ROTC, you need to be commended for that as well. You were there from Thursday afternoon through Sunday afternoon, so it was a long weekend, and it rained all weekend there, they said. So but that's all. I just want that soft skill thing and the donut as opposed to the whole, that applies to this as well.
My father-in-law had a way with words. But the education, see, with FlexCon is applying. You're learning theory, you're learning content and background in class, the reading, the writing, the math, the science, that sort of thing. But when you go to FlexCon, that's where people are contributing to the world, making things that are needed, and jobs. Families are able to support themselves through companies like that. That's the application. And that's what, in essence, we as a school district are trying to help capable young people like you to learn. And you're just doing a great job of grabbing a hold of it and doing something with it. Therese, you must have even a greater appreciation and good feeling for these kids. You produced one, for goodness sakes.
No, I'm incredibly proud of both of them tonight for their experience. speak to their experience. And I think that what they voiced here tonight, I've heard from the other students who participated. I think any work experience is a great experience, and these guys have definitely proven how valuable their time was spent this summer.
One other thing I want to say is there was this girl that was also in the FlexCon experience as we were, and the newfound confidence she had when I met her the first day versus, or I knew her previously, but when I really got to know her the first day versus the last day, it was immense. And just the way that she carried herself, and me and Hunter always we have a lot of experiences. We've been through those sort of things. It was her first one, and really, it was just such a great thing for all of us, and especially her. I was so happy to see that.
I absolutely agree with Luke on that.
You know what I'm talking about too, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear what you said.
I was just agreeing with what he said.
Okay, good. Any other comments or questions from committee members, administration? Well,
How many students went to FlexCon from Auburn?
7. We had 7 students participate. So, and yeah, it was great. They all did a 100-hour internship, and they were paid $15 an hour.
Nice.
I'll just say that I heard from Howie Latondre, who's our contact at FlexCon, what a great job all the students did and how well they represented our schools and our communities. He was just very complimentary about all the students, and they've been a great partner with us for a while now, but this was a particularly good experience this summer.
And just to piggyback, I just want to say that I'm really happy that Quabbin has invested in the Innovation Pathways program, because it is that program that I think is putting our focus on connecting students to work experiences. And I just think that every experience kids can have where they can apply the knowledge that they're learning in school, it does build their confidence, but it also helps them to imagine themselves in the future, which buys buy-in in school. They feel that what they're doing in school is more valuable because now they can picture where they can go. And just to sort of throw a question out there, the Innovation Pathways program is going to be gearing up their internship experiences for next year, because we're going to have 55 juniors who will be seniors that will need internship experiences in their senior year. So Joe, Greg, and I are working hard to build that drawer of experiences. So if anyone has contacts at companies that might be willing to host students, if you could throw those contacts to the 3 of us, that would be amazing.
yeah, see, this is terrific. This is why we as committee members, and I'm sure you as administrators equally, do what we do and have the pride we have in our district. And what do you read in the papers? Oh, we put a fire out. Oh, this is a disaster. Oh, we have to, we hold our breath and turn blue until just not looking ahead, looking down the line, looking to see where we can go to get better. Lee?
This reflects, and I don't want to drop the dime on MCAS, but we've talked about this before. This can't be measured in MCAS. I mean, so many people put some stuff, and MCAS does play a role, I understand that. But we see this, for years, we see this not just through ROTC, but just a lot of the programs we have. With our kids getting together, solving problems, the whole social aspect of it, developmental, so that when they leave Quabbin, they have these tools with them that they can carry forward. I mean, even when we go on the 8th grade trips, I mean, those kids are together 4 days maybe, but anybody who's been on that trip, I mean, they've always commentary on the way back how, gee, this kid used to be sort of like introverted, and now these 4 days, they've seen like a different kid. I mean, we see it all the way down through the middle school and even into the elementaries. And I think it's, I mean, we know it, but I think it's kind of sad that, I mean, in the Globe the last week, there have been discussions on MCAS, pro or con, et cetera, et cetera. They're emphasizing the wrong things as far as I'm concerned. Testing has a role, I agree, and you like to know where your students stand, but, I'd rather have this kind of stuff going on and maybe not have the best MCAS scores in the world versus having, bragging rights for MCAS and then, have your kids like doing nothing except sitting in the classroom. I mean, this is reflective, I think, of what we really want to do and what we've been doing for years. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, you can, you guys are the ones in the field there, not me.
I do think both of them have a role. I do agree that there's some of the smartest people, school smart, street smart. And those are two completely different things because some of the smartest people I've ever met have terrible grades. And what I think that honestly comes back down to is lack of discipline to get your grades done, to have long-term goals, because you need that to be able to get into colleges. If you like school or not, you need good grades. And, me and Hunter understand that, which a lot of kids don't understand that. So I do think it's a perfect balance of the two. If you could keep MCAS and keep producing these experiences. And another thing is ROTC, DECA, class officers, I'm blanking on the name, but whatever you had Nick Whitelock come up here for the last semester.
Student Advisory Council.
Yes, all those things. And, our experience over at FlexCon, I think that's what really separates Providence apart. And that is really just so great. In the more ways that we can get different students involved in these sort of things, it's amazing because, ROTC, there's a lot of certain things that deter kids, like the uniform, the military aspect of it. And then DECA, some people view it only as a business club. More things that we can put out that has this type of effect is really amazing. I think Innovation Pathways is doing a lot of that as well. And, I really believe in the way this school is going. It's too bad I'm out here in a couple years.
I agree with, I can't see your name tag over there.
It's okay.
But I agree with what you were saying. I think both play a role, and MCAS is very, very important in a broad level, but experiences like these are immeasurably important on a personal level.
Yeah. See, I think you guys have hit it on the head. There's a role for both. Having data, having information to know where there's success and where there's lack of success. For our students to have the basic reading, writing, math, science, social, you can build on that, but you do need to know those sorts of things. Going back quite a few years now, the language arts reading scores, 10th grade, they were okay, but the math wasn't. And whatever we did, math wasn't. So we went what do they call them? They weren't semesters, they were
Trimesters.
yeah. So we went an extra trimester in math, and it came up with the language arts scores. One of the 5 towns, scores were always lower. Kids weren't as prepared. Went to a full day kindergarten in that town. I'm not going to say which one. Doesn't matter. But that was appropriate use of that data and information to make a decision to improve the information that you have. So when you go to a FlexCon, you go to a leadership training, you go on to college, you go on to where you're going to go, you have that and you're ready to learn, to apply, to contribute, all those sorts of things. And our graduates are still doing it. I had a nice chat today with one of our graduates, Lauren Spargard. Strange name for Quabbin, isn't it? Holland, he's the head of a radiology clinic there. But they were concerned about green aspects. And so he had taken that on, graduate of our school. And using the knowledge and so here to take that on and to make the work at the hospital and in the practices better. It continues on forever for all of your life. And I can attest to that because I've had a lot of life. Graduated from Old Barry High School in 1960. Well, no, actually, I was in France that year, but I was in the class in 1961. So, thank you, guys. Thank you, Therese and Greg, for what you're doing. That, when your superintendent and I were kind of talking about this, we thought, she mentioned the internship and what you were doing. And it seemed to me this was a good thing for the school committee members to hear. Is it? Yeah, well, you know, this is really what's important. The MCAS stuff you have to know, you have to be able to do. That's a necessary floor, but then where you go with it, what you do with it, how you apply it. That's why I never get all that exercised about a particular score. But what are we doing about it? How are we making things better? It's this sort of stuff that really, I think, is the hallmark of this school district. So thanks again. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your 3 touchdowns. And
Thank you very much, Dr. Allen. Thank you.
that's the only thing we've got to do. Why don't you take a minute and tell us about.
Oh, sure. So I just came from OCAM, and we've been doing the circuit of having all of our towns sign the intermunicipal agreements. And OCAM is signed and sealed, and Cheryl and Kevin went to Barry tonight and they signed theirs. We just have to go back to pick it up for the seal tomorrow. So the last town is Hardwick, and we should be complete.
They signed on, I believe last week. So I don't know if they're bringing it up and we need to go pick it up, but it's signed.
So we're all set. Right. So that's good news, and we can move forward with the chiller project funding.
A lot of work. Very
Yes.
good, thank
It's
you.
just a little social dance. It's all good.
Oh, what a wonderful way to put it. It's almost as good as the donut store. Okay.
I gotta tell you, I drove Luke back 2 days. There was transportation wise, Luke received transportation from there. And I could have rode with that kid all week because the conversation flowed. It just kept going.
Little, sitting in the stands with his mom.
Well, he's such a terrific kid.
Yes.
And he's always doing something and doing it very well.
You know, I'd bring up something I thought was absolutely boring, and he'd dive into it, and we were into it. I'm thinking, it's really not that important.
Okay. The policies, I've gone through these various policies with the superintendent, and I think that they all fall into one of 2 categories. There's a little bit of a word change, or it's been dropped because it's covered elsewhere. Is there anything else, any other kind of these policies? Okay. So we have them all listed. Let's just take them in order. Does anybody have a comment or a question on the regional school district legal status? I believe we are legally constituted. I'm not much concerned about that. Okay. School improvement plan. Few words, changes, but we do it. We know we need to do it. I think we do it better. I don't know if our plan is any better, but what we have in the plan is far superior to what most districts are doing.
Can I just interject, Dr. Allen?
Would you like to interject? Please.
I just, so just because our principals attend all of these meetings, and so we will be sending them copies once you approve these changes, but there are some changes to note in here. And that is around school councils, that principals will now be a co-chair. So you're also going to have a co-chair with one of your parents that serves on that council, and that decisions are to be made by consensus. And that all of the meetings have to follow the open meeting law. And agendas, need to be sent prior. So I just mentioned those things because it's more formalized than it has been in the past.
Okay.
How do the principals feel?
Principals, do you have any comment on the fact that the government is here and overseeing us and clearly helping us to be better than we already are? I'm being somewhere between sarcastic and facetious, but you have the opportunity to add your, if you would like. Chris?
Yeah, no, I didn't want to step on your words, Dr. Allen, but no, I think it's really important. And I think that when we, reach out to families in the community and we're asking for their time, I think it obviously respects and values, the commitment that they're making to work and partner with the schools on the council. So I don't have any problem with that at all. I think it's fair as far as the decision-making body goes.
Oh, I think you're right. I'm talking about somebody telling us what and how and when and so forth. Trish, any comments you would like to make?
No, I agree with just what Chris said, and we've kind of been doing it that way as it is, but just a little bit more formal now.
That's my point exactly. Okay. Let's see, that's the school improvement plan.
So the addition on the school improvement plan is really around, and I think we've been working on this, so I'm not worried about it at all, but it's calling out to create a culture of inclusion and diversity, which is something that we've really been focused on.
Yep. That diversity and inclusion is a tough one. There aren't many minority kids in our districts, and yet when we hear from them, I won't say it's exactly surprising, but it's a bit concerning. The fact that there really, it's not exactly alienation, but there are more differences felt than I would have expected from my perspective. And yet they're there and they're real. So
our diversity is growing. So we have more students from different backgrounds. So just keep that in mind as our enrollment changes. That is something that we're seeing. And it's one of the reasons why we've been working so hard on it. So
there was a report required, I think in about 1957, 58, something like that. And it required in those days, and Hubbardston, Hardwick didn't have we had Petersham and old Union number 2. And the report was, how are your minority candidates doing in school? And the superintendent's report said he is doing fine. So things have clearly changed since then, but okay, that's the school improvement. Development of procedures. Superintendent will be responsible. It just, you can almost end it right there.
it's all good.
Okay. School committee review of procedures. It's expected the superintendent and administrator will need to do that with the policies of the school committee. Can you imagine that, school committee? How many times I've gone through some of these policies. It goes back to when Maureen Marshall was president of the Teachers Association, Teachers Union, a long time ago. Yes.
So I'm just going to, up top in the red, so on this page, the suggestion is to actually remove this policy from our manual because it's not something that MASC suggests.
Less the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Because they're the same.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying?
So the school committee review of procedures will go away because school committee review of procedures,
CHB
BGD.
will go away, yes.
Yep, okay. Agenda format, we do that. School committee memberships. How many here are going down to the Cape next month? Are you gonna come?
Yeah, I am.
Nobody else?
Page
I have Walter and
No, you don't.
Mark Bill.
Walter and
Walter goes.
And Deb.
good for you. I'm glad you're coming. I'll introduce you to my office. You know they had an office for me down there?
You don't have to introduce her. She's going to walk right by.
I do know that you have your own office.
Yes. Okay, school committee memberships, we just did that. Approval of handbooks, removed as unnecessary, wonderful. Administrator, removed as unnecessary, those are JKA is in JKAA. Have a stutter to do that one. Physical restraint of students. Boy,
We actually had one, a corporal punishment. Really?
yeah. Well, I've spent a lot of time in the South. Some of those states still have,
Yeah, they do.
they you know, with the paddle.
I spent time in a Catholic school. They did the same.
Uh-huh.
In Worcester. Yeah. in Worcester.
In Worcester, okay.
Hopefully.
Removal of KCB. Electronic messaging, updated. You know what? I have to say, I'm not real concerned about that for myself.
I'm so surprised at that.
The rest of you guys are on your own. You don't see the humor in that. I don't much use those sorts of things. I don't have a computer, for instance. I have an iPad and look things up, but I like to talk to people personally. Personal interaction is. Okay, so I think civil rights complaint policy for child nutrition. USDA. I can remember back, was it 65, 66, something like that, talking to the state director of nutrition, because the state was going to require that we have breakfast available in our school for low SES kids. I said, you know, it's not a bad idea. It just doesn't work in our district. You shouldn't mandate that. Recommending it, suggesting it. But many of those kids come from farm families in those days. And breakfast, they probably got a better breakfast than most of the other kids. So, okay, so we have that.
Arlene, are we developing a procedure, complaint procedure?
We will, yes.
And Dr. Allen, can I just say that these were all from that, remember, if you recall, we got the flyer from MASC back, I want to say in the spring, and they had pages and pages of policies, so.
This is the distillation.
Well, this is part of it. We have more for November and I have more for December, but I'm going through also, there were a lot of them that just needed a word or two updated, which they suggested they didn't even have to go to committee. So I've just been updating those as I go along, but it's been a time.
It's a good thing that we have a you here to do that sort of thing.
Yes.
Who know what you're doing and are willing to do what you're doing. So thank you. Do
There'll be
we,
lots more coming.
Stay tuned.
I can't wait, yeah. Do we have a motion on these?
Sure.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so all in favor? All right, so these will go to the committee to be put on the table. And I have to stop myself from saying, for 30 days.
Oh, right.
We don't know till the next meeting, but you know, for what, 48, 49 of my years on here, it was for 30 days. That's what it said until was it a year or two ago, we changed that.
Sure.
So,
All kinds of changes. Do we have a new policy for that?
yes,
We updated that policy.
yeah, we updated it, right. So that takes care of that part. And following up on Lee's comments, we have the MCAS report. I was thinking it was.
It is.
Well, hot damn.
So, yep. So we're going to look at our MCAS and accountability results as we do every year. I don't think there was anything too shocking or surprising in the data, but I do think it's important, as we mentioned, that there's a role for MCAS and giving us information about where we're at and where we can continue getting better. So we're going to spend a few minutes looking at that data right now.
Is this first page the entire district?
Yep, we're looking at district level results, mostly by grade level, really.
Okay.
1 second. Sure.
So if you want to go to the next slide. Here we're looking at the,
Next slide.
yep,
Okay.
that one, yep. We're looking at, by grade level, the percent of students meeting or exceeding expectations, and we're comparing the 2022 and 2023 results. This is for ELA. So you can see how that the percentage varies over time. The bar on the right, that sort of orangey red, or at least that's how I think of it, is the 2023, and the more yellow one is 2022. One sort of one piece of context to keep in mind is last year was our first year with a new ELA curriculum. So, usually there's a sort of an implementation year where you're sort of learning the curriculum, but I think we feel pretty good about the results overall. I would call out the 10th grade in particular results as being very strong. We saw, some improvement between 2022 and 2023 in lots of places that we feel good about. We're going to look more, I know this is MCAS, but we're going to look later at early grades literacy using some of our internal assessments, which we think will be really helpful for you to see, really important for you to see.
So this isn't state average, this is just last year and this year?
Yep. So we're just looking at how we're changing year to year.
Okay.
So on the curious why the 7th grade seemed like a decent drop.
Yeah. 7th grade was a place where we continue doing some work. I also think that's as kids come into the middle school post-COVID, we're seeing larger gaps that we're working hard to address. We'll talk about that in a little bit and how we're trying to deal with some of these challenges.
If I can just add into, sometimes behind this data are some unusual situations. In particular, in 7th grade, we had a long-term absence of one of our teachers due to an illness. So just bear in mind that sometimes there are those things that can impact our student outcomes.
The next one we're looking at growth, which is we're looking at the change in performance for students at a student level. This is the average, one year to the next. You can see that it varies overall, but the state average is 50, and in places we're doing better than that, and at places we're right around that. 7th grade, again, as Leah pointed out, was an area that is concerned, but is an area of concern. But I think we have some insight into the specific challenges we were facing at that grade level that were sort of unique to that particular year. But, we always use this data and look at it very closely, and as we sort of think about and guide our work for the coming year, and that helps us make decisions over the long term as well.
One thing to just note about growth is that the average growth is between 40 to 60. As Joe said, state average is right at 50, right? Sometimes we don't see the change in achievement until we see the change in growth. So we know when our growth goes to the high end of that high 50s and over 60% that we're starting to close those achievement gaps for our students. So that's really what we're looking at and paying attention to. So it's not always a direct correlation when you see it. Sometimes we can grow kids, but we haven't necessarily changed their categories.
And it strikes me, related to some of Lee's comments earlier about MCAS, that it's cumulative, but by the time we get to the 10th grade, they seem to be doing much better than they did in the earlier grades. So I'm assuming that it's the coming together, it's the pulling, it's here, it's there, it's elsewhere, but it all comes together in our way rather than the way, I need to think of a polite adjective, some wonderful administrator at DESE determined it should be.
Yeah, I think our 10th grade has done a great job, and I do think it is sort of coming together of a lot of different threads that start in elementary and come up through middle school and sort of become visible, I guess, in 10th grade.
Yes. I think that's quite satisfying.
you want to go to the next one?
Please.
So now we're going to look at math. I think, overall, again, we're seeing that we saw a lot of improvement in most grade levels. Some places were sort of very similar to where we were. I think, third grade is an area that we're looking at very closely to sort of see what we can do to support kids better there and make sure that they're getting what they need. But 10th grade was a place where we saw significant gains. We're going to look at the accountability, and you'll see how this sort of plays out. But the math results, I think, showed that we're continuing to grow and get better in multiple grade levels, but also give us some guidance for where we want to focus our efforts at improvement. And here's growth.
Average.
Right, and so Colleen was referencing that 40 to 60 is the sort of average range and above 60. So I did want to point out overall our growth we're pretty much on par with the state. We're growing, giving kids are growing at about the same rate as the state. But I did want to point out fourth grade with that 71 is a very strong number. That is a very good performance. When you're doing that, what you're doing is catching up kids that might have been behind or now catching up. And that's when you are moving them from that maybe not quite meeting to a meeting, or maybe from meeting to exceeding kind of category. Science, we're going to talk more. We're going to talk a little bit about curriculum, but here's our science results. And I think one of the things we're doing to address our science performance is adopting a new curriculum in the middle school. So the science MCAS happens in grades 5, 8, and 10. And we think by providing this new curriculum called Open SciEd, that it's going to be it's going to be better aligned to state standards and give kids a richer and sort of deeper experience in science. It has a lot of focus on inquiry and building sort of scientific practices, which we think will benefit our kids in lots of ways, MCAS just being one of them. And this year we added a science teacher in the 6th grade. So every student in 6th grade will have a full year of science. And then in 7th, obviously in 7th and 8th grade, they already had science all year long. So we think over time we'll see some real impacts in 8th grade, but then also in 10th. And we're piloting in the old curriculum in 9th grade now as well.
We used to have science kits.
Yep.
That a teacher in OCAM put together about 30 years ago. Do we still have and use them, or do they still make any sense?
We do have, don't we use mystery science in the early elementary? Those are.
It's not a kit.
Well.
We do use mystery science,
yeah.
yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you know what I'm talking about.
Crystal Lucchese built them in OCAM, and they used to travel the district, and I think as they traveled over 30 years, it kind of disappeared. I can't I taught science a couple years in Hardwick before I came to the high school. And there were no kits available. And that was before 2010.
Yeah, Tom Komisky was working on them too.
Yeah, Crystal built them, and then there was a time early on that they were actively used, and they were much appreciated. But I think, sounds like Joe's got that covered now with the new curriculum.
Yep.
I just actually cleaned out the kits out of the Science Connection room this summer.
Okay.
They're still around, Trish?
There were some around.
That's hilarious. Not entirely surprising.
So would I be correct in looking at these numbers to say, so I was looking at the math, the 3rd grade. I think that's the only 3rd grade we have listed. So am I thinking then that do I back everything up 2 years? So to think that this 3rd grade was in 1st grade during the COVID year?
See, they would have taken, so they would have been 3rd grade in 23, 22 is 2nd, 21 would have been 1st, and so 20 would have been kindergarten. Right?
Right.
19, 20.
First grade. So I'm just trying to think of trying to reflect on what kids would be learning like 2 years ago to say that, okay, if they weren't really in school as much, or obviously the crazy year, that, what effect that might have. And we read a lot in articles in newspapers, not so much as much in Massachusetts, although some, but nationwide, of how kids are really backed up.
Yep.
Significantly in some places because of the whole COVID timeframe. I mean, I guess if I look at these numbers, they're, even the ones where there seems a fairly large disparity is not horrible. If we're thinking that 2 years ago, these kids weren't, they might have been in school, but
Yeah.
it was a turmoil year.
No, I think that's exactly right. And it's a good point about third grade in general is the results that we see in third grade are really the cumulative results of K to 3, right? So that's an important thing to keep in mind, that as we think about where we need to what we need to address, it's not necessarily the case that what we need to address is in third grade. But I do think you're right that the gaps there are gaps that we need to continue to close, that we're using multiple strategies to address. I think I'm very optimistic that we'll see continued growth going into the future. So one of the things that we are happiest about and proudest about is the improvement we saw in chronic absenteeism. So the state set goals for us in the chronic absenteeism, and every one of our schools exceeded the goal. So you'll see here, remember, in chronic absenteeism, lower is better. It means that fewer of our students are missing a lot of school. We saw really big gains at every school. I think we saw the biggest gains at some of the earlier grade levels. That's pretty typical. But we saw gains in the middle school and the high school as well. So obviously we can't teach kids if they're not here. So getting them here, making sure this is a place that, making sure that they're in school regularly is an important part of what we need to do. And we saw a lot of growth and improvement there. So that's something I really want to highlight for the committee.
Are we still 18%?
But yeah, last year it was still 18%, but that's a 13-point drop from the year before.
What's this year looking like?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can find out.
Anybody have any idea?
I don't. Principal DeMarias includes it in her weekly memo every week, and I did notice that last week had dropped significantly, but Nurse Kim Stady had told us that we should sort of expect that once the kids were back in person and more together, that we would see that illness go up. We've had a lot of teachers out sick, so we're hoping it's a one-off thing and it's a cold or whatever's going around and we'll be over it. Yeah, so we can get you those numbers over time though, for sure. I want to give a huge shout out to our principals too, because it's been no challenging task. Last year, we spent a lot of our admin meetings talking about what we were doing about chronic absenteeism, and they were making phone calls home and sending letters and following up with families. And as you may recall, last year, we were unable to fill our elementary social worker position. And that was a position that really helped our administrators to reach out to families who struggled to get their students to school. We're happy to report that we do have someone in place, a new person at the middle and high school due to retirement, and a new one at the elementary level. So we're hoping that this continues. We still have a lot of growth to do on chronic absenteeism, but it's a huge celebration for us. And,
How many positions, or do we have other positions not filled?
We do have a few remaining positions that are not filled. They're mostly in our special education department. Yeah.
Bring back Mike Stady.
Okay.
Oh, sure, sorry.
So I mentioned before that we also wanted to look at our early literacy data. So over the last few years, a big focus in the district has been on changing our approach to early literacy instruction and using more of a phonics-based approach. That work includes adopting a new assessment system called DIBBLES, which we adopted a couple years ago, just before I got here, I think. And the new curriculum that I already mentioned, we implemented last year for the first year, as well as a great deal of professional development for teachers around this approach to literacy instruction. And what I've got up here actually is a little bit different than the other slides. What we're looking at here is the percent of students at risk for not being at grade level for reading in the fall of 2022, so last fall, and then for the same students, the percent by the end of the school year, right? So what that means is if you look at kindergarten as a great example, when we gave the students an assessment last fall in early October, 52% of our kindergarten students were at risk. We identified them as at risk for not being on grade level in reading. By the end of the school year, only 15% of our students were at risk. So we saw really significant improvement and growth in those students over that year. And what the other part of this that's important to know about these assessments, it's not the same assessment the student takes in the fall and then in the spring. The assessment they gave in the fall is, this is what we expect a student to know in October of their kindergarten year. And then at the spring, in the May assessment, it's what do we expect them to know by the end of the year, right? So it's not that they're taking the same assessment. They're actually saying, so what we're doing is catching them up. We're taking kids that were maybe behind and not only teaching them a year's worth, we're teaching them more than a year's worth because they're catching up to where they need to be by the end of the year, even though they started the year behind where we would hope they would be. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So we
Sure
see that.
supports your hypothesis, doesn't it?
Which one? I have a lot.
The correct one. Well, no, the one where you were saying the kids in the early K to 2 or 3, because of COVID, just got kind of got left behind. And you can see that they're
But
there.
you're seeing that in 3rd through 6th,
Yeah,
where
they-
there's not as much disparity anymore.
Right.
So the percentage of students at risk is lower than compared to kindergarten for sure, which I think is what you're pointing out. And then you also do see lower growth. It does get harder and when kids get older to sort of catch them up, which is one of the reasons we really focus a lot. We focus on all our grade levels, but one of the reasons we think a lot about early grades is because we know getting kids sort of on track and ready in the early grades will lead to more success down the road and put them in a much better place to be successful down the road.
But those are those kids that missed a lot of that, right?
Yep.
The 3rd through 6th.
When we look at these grids, are they like, when you say 5th grade, is that last year's?
Last year's 5th grade.
Okay,
But this is looking at last year's data. So when the
Okay.
grade listed is the grade they were in at the time.
okay,
So they're now in the 5th grade, for example, is now 6th graders.
great.
Okay, what school percentile?
So the state of Massachusetts compares the results in our accountability system for all schools all schools, but only those schools with similar grade levels. So I didn't say that very well, but basically there's one bucket that's elementary and middle school, and then there's another bucket that's high school. And then there's a third one that's middle high, but we're not actually in that category because our schools are still officially 2 separate schools, even though we don't necessarily treat them that way. So there's the elementary and middle school bucket and then the high school bucket. And then they can sort of compare results across the state for all those schools. They do it for the school overall and by different demographic groups within the school. And then you might know that some schools in the state get extra support based on their accountability results. We're not in that category at all, but that's how they sort of determine who gets that kind of support.
Are these high needs kids?
Some of them, the all students is literally every student in the building. The high needs students are those students that have the most significant needs. And those are special education students. Those are low income students. Those are English learners and what are called former English learners, which means they're just a year or 2 out. Is that right, John?
Right, it's still monitored.
They're still students that were still monitored, but are not considered EL currently, right? So it's just their first year or 2 after sort of exiting that status. So that's all the high needs students.
Yeah, the face validity of this information is kind of strange because you look at low income, all of our elementary schools, they go 88, 61, 39, 64. And then you come to the high school and it's 36. So all of a sudden the families got richer when the kids went to the high school is what it looks like.
No, this is what it's saying is that it's the accountability percentile and how we're doing across all indicators in the accountability system relative to others, right? So it's our percentage. So like in the case of Hardwick, it means where our overall performance is the same as or better than 88% of elementary and middle schools across the state.
For that low income.
For that low income category.
Oh, so Hardwick is a superstar.
And Hardwick had very strong results. And in other places we're seeing that there's still work to be done.
Like the high school. Okay. And points earned?
So they set goals, the state sets goals every year and says, did we meet those goals? And then measures our progress. And overall, we see that our schools made a lot of gains. When I mentioned before that we exceeded targets for chronic absenteeism, that means we earned 4 out of 4 possible points for every school in the district in that category. I think in terms of our improvements and the possible points earned in the middle school is the area that we're most focused on. We saw that in the 7th grade data for MCAS. One of the big areas that we know we're continuing to try to address is in MCAS achievement in the middle school. We saw some declines there in 7th grade, for example, and but we also saw significant growth, or reasonable growth at least, in those grade levels. So I think what we believe is happening is that students are coming in with some gaps after COVID. So even though their growth is on par with where it's been overall in the middle school, achievement is not as high as it was. But we have some strategies to address that we're going to talk about in just a second.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the same question.
Okay, go ahead.
SWD.
Oh, sorry, students with disabilities.
That was my question too.
So there's just a few things we wanted to make sure we highlighted to make sure you're aware of, that we're strategies we're implementing to address some of the data that we saw coming out of MCAS accountability. One is the new curriculum that I already mentioned. We are implementing 6th, 7th, and 8th grade new science curriculum this year. And we also, and I hadn't mentioned this before actually, but we're implementing a new math curriculum in 7th, 8th, and 9th called Carnegie Learning. But in high school, the other change that we'll be making moving forward, might remember this from last year, we used to do the traditional algebra, geometry, algebra 2 kind of track. There's a new approach to math instruction that takes an integrated it's called integrated math. And instead of teaching each of those contents or those classes separately, each class, each year, you learn a little bit of algebra, a little bit of algebra 2, and a little bit of geometry. And you integrate concepts in each of those. And the idea is that it supports students' understanding of math concepts because some of the content in each of those classes is more related than if you teach them separately. So you might learn a concept in 9th grade and then be asked to apply it in 10th grade a year later. And instead, we think kids will be successful if those concepts are taught closer together just in terms of time, right? So we're going to move from algebra, geometry, algebra 2 to integrated 1, 2, and 3 in those years, but it'll still cover the standards for algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. Does that make sense? We're transitioning now, which is why the new curriculum is only in 9th grade this year. So 9th grade students are taking integrated 1. Next year, we'll add integrated 2 as those students go to 10th grade. And then the year after that, we'll add an integrated 3. There will be a small number of students that are taking an accelerated math program so that they'll be doing, they actually will get through the integrated 3 by the end of their sophomore year. So for those students, we will, they'll have access to those
Take
materials.
the IB courses then.
And then they can go into IB as a junior. Yep. Or AP. It's also our second year with Into Reading and Into Literature, which is our ELA curriculum that we implemented last year. So it's Into Reading we use through elementary school, and then the middle high school we switched to Into Literature. It's the same curriculum. They just rename it as you move into secondary schools. I mentioned before about some strategies about addressing the gaps that we've seen, particularly as students enter middle school. So we've increased our intervention options for students. In 6th grade, they still have access to a WIN block that will provide interventions for those students that need them, and then enrichment for kids that are on grade level already. But we're adding some additional intervention opportunities in 7th grade, including we added some staff intervention tutors that will be working in our 7th grade and a little bit in our 8th grade, but mostly in 7th grade. So we'll have those in 6th and 7th grade now. We're also implementing or piloting really this year co-teaching. Co-teaching is a instructional approach where you have two adults in a classroom at the same time, typically a special education teacher and a content-based teacher that work together to teach kids and then also provide small group support or enrichment within the class. So we're doing that in the middle school in ELA. We're piloting that this year. We're continuing to work with Dr. Hawley and his group on culturally and linguistically responsive teaching and learning. We're continuing professional development with the Hill on the new approach to literacy instruction. We're using our professional development time to implement professional learning communities to give teachers time to work together and continue to build their practice and learn new skills. We are, as we do every year, we will be setting goals at a classroom and student level and then monitoring our progress in meeting those goals. And that's related to literacy, but in really any sort of practice. And then we'll always continue our ongoing professional development opportunities during our professional development days and after school, as we've done for years.
Comments or questions?
Quick question. When do our kids normally take chemistry?
Junior year?
Can be, sometimes you get their sophomore year, it depends, they have a choice to elect either physics or chem. Sophomore.
You know, when you talked about splitting the whole math approach with some algebra, some geometry, I'm just thinking of, I remember when you get into periodic table and compound equations, et cetera, anybody who knew algebra or had algebra had a much easier time than those who didn't, because you use a lot of algebra in those equations. I just am hoping that we get them through the point of algebra where they can transfer that into doing their chemical equations.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, I think that even though it's integrated, I think the freshman year leans more heavily on algebra. But I do think that having access to like geometry and algebra 2 earlier will also benefit kids in both chemistry and physics. Okay.
By doing, combining it with that, does it change anything for kids when they're applying to college?
No, they'll still get a grade for the class and they'll still be able to, actually, if anything, we think it'll give kids more access to advanced math courses in their junior and senior year. So by doing that, that would only benefit, right? By being able to say you took more upper level math classes, then that would benefit your any college applications. But in terms of what it shows on your transcript, right, you would still show that you would still have completed Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, that.
Gotcha.
Thank you. See, this, I think, is the benefit of the MCAS, in that we can see where we're doing well, where we're not doing so well over time. We try a new curriculum. It leads us to try other things. And as a basis now, it's no more than a basis. It's the floor. It's so well different than the ceiling. But that's why I think this sort of thing is good to do still. Okay. Curriculum updates and class size updates.
Well, I think the curriculum updates are really the things that I just already talked about in terms of the new science and math curriculum. So I sort of really covered those actually in the presentation.
We missed one though, if it's okay if I add, but when we were talking about the internship update, I just wanted to make you aware of an opportunity that we're currently working on. Our fire chief from New Braintree has been partnering with someone to allow us to offer a full EMT certification course held at New Braintree Grade School at night. Our students who are 16 and a half by December 31st, if they want to take the course, will have the opportunity to join that course and become fully certified. Now, the course is about $2,000 to take all the assessments and everything else. We will write for some grants once we know we've got this in place so that we can help support the students and fund that program for them. But as you're probably aware, all of our towns are in need of EMTs. And so this is something that our towns have been asking for. And our hope is if we can run it as a night session, community members as well as students can partake in it. And then potentially maybe it's something we could offer right on our own campus over here for our high school students. So I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Great.
Absolutely.
It is great. Can we send a letter of thanks to Peggy's chief from the school
We
committee?
sure can. We have a tour. First, they're touring the building to make sure it's going to fit their needs, so on and so forth. So once we have it ready to roll, then we will absolutely send him a thanks. He's been really great, and he jumped right on it when I mentioned it to him. So we're really appreciative of that.
You're whispering over there. Do you have any?
We are.
And I'm sure that's the response, that's all you wish to say.
Like I said, I'd like to take a course.
Yeah, I think that's terrific.
They'd love to have you take the course.
It's almost
Young
like,
person's job, though.
it's almost like an extension of your refereeing work, isn't it?
Well, I hope not.
I was gonna say, that might be a little excessive.
Okay. Low enrollments.
This is our sort of annual look at the courses that we're running this year that are, only have 14 or fewer students enrolled in them. And so, you're gonna recognize many of the courses are sort of the trends we've seen in the past years as well. And many of them are ones that we are running in order to maintain programs. So our ROTC, some of our world language programs, IB, AP, and innovation pathways courses. In some cases, they are either programs that are relatively new, like innovation pathways we're trying to get off the ground, or had some struggles in our French program the last couple of years with some teacher turnover and whatnot. We're trying to build that back up. We have a new person in place that grow that program for us. So there are some that we don't want to cut them because we'd have to disband the entire program. And if you notice our numbers down here under planning for the future, our grade 11 enrollment right now, only 115 students and 12 to 121. Those are really small numbers considering where we've been in the past. My own little old-time story here, Dr. Allen, when I graduated in 1994, I was one of 113 students, and so we're really kind of back at those numbers again for 11th and 12th grade, but I don't think we're going to stay there, because if you look at our middle school, our 6th grade right now, we have 184, 7th grade is 165, and 8th is 177, so I feel like we're sort of in a little bit of a dip right now with our numbers. And so to cut programs would be short-sighted, because eventually, we'll want them again for our other students.
What's IB sports? Now, I know IB, but sports?
It's sports, exercise, and health science. So it's sort of like a track, like leading toward somebody who's looking, getting involved in physical therapy or that sort of thing.
Our own Renee?
Yeah, but it's an IB, science class.
Boy, I didn't know IB went in that direction, you think of chemistry and calculus and that sort of thing.
We actually have a real broad number of courses to choose from. We don't offer.
Oh, I think that's great, yeah.
Terry, this year's freshman class, I know there was like 180 in the 8th, but now is it close to, so people went on to, different schools or what?
I think it was like 190, am I making the nuts? It's pretty big. We had a lot of kids enroll. I don't want to, Jess would know better than I would know, but we had a significant number of students enrolled this summer at multiple grade levels in the middle high school both, I think.
Mainly 7th grade, that was the highest.
Yeah. So even though
9th grade was another one of those classes, then
Yeah.
in the 150, 160 range.
Have a little bit of growth in some of our towns, Hubbardson building, there's some new people who are enrolled kind of at the last minute on us in some cases, I think. Our numbers
Hubbardston's
grew at the
enrollment
last minute.
exceeds their ability to produce school committee members.
When you do the school choice, Jess? Was it school choice or?
We had a lot of new students through school choice. I had those figures.
We have.
We're about 300, aren't we?
We're under 300. I want to say we're 282, I think it was. I can look at what those figures were. If I had the right computer mouse, I could look at what those figures were. But we enrolled a lot of school choice kids this year, and mainly from North Brookfield, I think was the highest.
Good that they come here.
It,
Yes.
what do you see, besides Monty Tech, where do you see our other students going elsewhere to? Do they go to private schools or?
Some go to Pathfinder, so
Pathfinder.
we also have Pathfinder's
That's
vocational
homeschool.
school.
Some of our school choice students go to Bay Path, you know, if they're from North Brookfield or Spencer or
So mostly the vocational schools is.
Which we feel that
Pretty much.
innovation pathway, it's one of the reasons why we sort of adopted the program in the first place, is we felt like that could help to fill a little bit of a vocational void for us to keep our own students in. I think that Therese and the innovation pathway team has done a great job getting our kids enrolled. We purposely moved intro to innovation pathway down to middle school this year. So our middle school students are spending more time learning about the pathway program when they get up there. So what would happen previously is in 8th grade, students would decide to seek vocational opportunities. And many times our students didn't understand our innovation pathway programs and what they could do for them. So we've already gotten really great feedback. The first focus area of the innovation pathway class is around business, and the kids are really enjoying it. So we're hopeful that doing that sooner at the middle school level will allow them to see themselves in that program. We also did a different mix with Project Lead the Way to have kids also, that's a big part of our innovation pathway program as well. So we pulled that out from the science curriculum in middle school, and it's its own class separately now. So we're hoping those two things will keep our kids with us. As you know, that's our goal.
And we have 158 students signed up this year in grades 9, 10, 11 for innovation pathway. So we feel really, we feel strong, we feel really good about that. And our goal is 50 to 60 kids per grade level. So we're hoping by next year we'll have that 9 through 12.
So I know that there were only sort of a smaller number of students needing to do an internship this year as seniors, but you heard Therese talk about there's a big number coming up for next year.
What'd you say, 55, 60 next year?
55.
65?
So some of these
55.
higher level courses in the pathways might have small numbers now that might take on.
That's fantastic.
French IB, I understand. What's French AB with a small b and French AB with a big B?
Ab initio is the IB term for a beginner level. So ab initio 1 is the first course a freshman would take in French. Ab initio
They just have to be given at different times, is that the deal?
So I think one of the things that we try to do when we offer courses is make sure that kids have as many choices as they can possibly have. But part of that means if they're choosing, if they want to take, say, an AP course and they want in science and they want to do one of our innovation pathway programs, but there's only so many blocks a day. So we try to offer the same class multiple times so that kids that might have conflicts at one period can take it a different period. So some of what you see here is not necessarily like ceramics is a good example. We have multiple sections of ceramics. Most of them are fully subscribed, but we do have a small section of ceramics, or maybe two. And part of the reason for that is in order to make it available to all kids that would like to take it, we offer it multiple times, actually across multiple teachers, I think, so that as many kids can fit it in their schedule as we possibly can. So most of the sections are actually, aren't on this list because they have 20, 25, whatever it is. But there are some sections that are smaller, and we do that to make it as accessible as possible.
You can see even in some of our core classes like integrated math 1, IB English literature, SL year 1, those are our core courses. So we have multiple sections of them, but you sort of can't dissolve one without making all the other numbers going.
One of the goals of the school committee, 35, 40 years ago now, we had kids with 2 and 3 study halls a day. And we said as a school committee, that's ridiculous. they're here, they should be in a class learning something, not sitting in a study hall doing whatever kids do in study halls. Be polite and not extrapolate too much, but the learning is minimal, I think we could say, as opposed to being in a classroom, taking an academic course of some sort, or ceramics.
Aren't study laws outlawed now?
And the other piece to say about this is some of the classes are sort of intentionally designed for what we know will be a smaller number of students. So for example, integrated 1H is integrated 1 honors. I mentioned the option that some kids will have to have take an accelerated approach to the integrated. They actually can get to integrated 3 in 2 years. So instead of going 3 years for integrated 1, 2, and 3, I don't think that's going to necessarily ever be the right approach for a lot of kids, but there'll be some kids that really is the right approach and will benefit from them. So it's a smaller class, but it's meeting a specific need for some students, and I think it's a good thing that we have that, and I'm glad we can offer it, but it's not necessarily ever going to be huge.
Okay, any comments or questions on class size from school committee
I
members?
lost my question. I had one.
Oh, sorry.
I lost.
Dr. Allen, or someone had asked about the number of students for school choice. We had 65 new school choice students.
Wow.
So we're up to 284 from 272.
Do we know how many choiced out? How much to go digging deep?
Not yet, we don't know that.
We can bring that to the next meeting if you like.
So let me spin off a question based on rumor, and it's totally based on rumor, but I've been asked or told that some of our better athletes have been choicing out because of the rigor, I guess, of our academics. How true is that?
I have not heard grumbling here and there.
Greg, go ahead. You can go first.
I'm aware that some of our student athletes have choiced out to go to districts that have early college designation where they can access college level courses at Mount Westchester Community College or Fitchburg State directly through the high school where they are. And what we're trying to do by getting the early college designation now, which we're attempting to do, is kind of answer that issue that those kids that are choicing out to go to Gardner, let's say, wouldn't need to do that anymore because they'd be able to access that right here.
So that's the opposite in a way of what I heard. So they're choicing out for a better educational opportunity as opposed to not wanting.
I haven't heard before that anybody has ever said anything about that we didn't have rigor, but they did want to go to. I know specifically of a number of students that have gone to school districts that have an early college designation.
Okay.
I think you were saying the opposite. You were saying students are leaving to be our
That's what I'm
expectation.
saying. Once again, rumor. That's what I had heard.
You were saying that we were too rigorous?
Right.
Right, that there was a question of, the way it was raised to me of, geez, can we get, some tutors for these kids because, they kind of want to study, but they don't have the discipline. I mean, I'm not blaming the district, but part of it is their own discipline, and maybe we need to be a little more rigorous with them, but maybe they're just saying, hey, I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to another place where I can,
That is the case for a few kids. Every year, there's 1 or 2 kids that will say, and they also will transfer out because they will have better playing opportunities. So that the kids that go, specifically athletes that go to other school districts, it's really a very complex situation for each individual kid because they go for very different reasons.
Yeah, they could go to North Brookfield and play right away.
Some that I know have gone for early college, and I can remember in years past, we've lost some that have gone because they were going to get better playing time at another school, or they were going to get, they didn't have to take IB English courses in their junior and senior year. They could take English.
Yeah.
But how do they get through MIAA to do that,
MIAA grants waivers pretty frequently for kids. If the kid doesn't ever say, I'm leaving because I want to play at another school, there's not generally anything that prevents that kid from playing at that other school. We've had kids that have come to us for a variety of reasons over the years, and we've been able to get waivers for those kids. Kids go to other schools for a variety of reasons and get waivers. If the family is
Smart,
smart enough to say we're going to play,
right?
and they claim they're going for academic reasons, that's a legitimate reason to change schools.
I mean, that's part of the reason we had a number of our kids playing hockey at Gardner or Leominster, because we could set up the agreement so our kids could play, because I know there were a couple that said, you know, I want to play, if we can't set it up, we were able to set that up, that partnership.
But there's a great deal of complexity to kids that leave to go to other schools when they get to like sophomore or junior year in high school.
Yeah.
One thing I'll just note on that, so we have 2, to my knowledge, this year that that were athletes that left. What I want to say about the MIAA decisions is that, to my knowledge, there's not follow-up with the schools to actually determine if what the student is reporting for the reasons that they're going there are actually true and accurate. So I actually have considered writing them a letter, because it really bothers me that, you know, you can report anything that has sort of happened to this council and they say, sure, okay, as long as it's not going to impact, and Greg probably knows this off the top of his head, but it's like, is it going to impact the team, or, you know, different things like that, which you'd be really hard pressed to say that losing one student was going to, right? Then they grant the waiver. I think there should be some sort of process where they're gathering that evidence and they're making sure that it's true and accurate before they make that decision. But in my experience, which is very limited up until this point, I haven't seen that they actually do that, which is a concern for me.
Well, they really leave it to the schools. You know, like in my experience, I had kids when I was the principal that I would not sign a waiver for. And the student can appeal to the MIA, they go through the process, and I have never had a kid that appealed our decision not to sign a waiver and not be granted a waiver. They go through that appeal process.
Okay. Coming back to agendaed business at hand, I assume committee members support what the low incidence is. Yeah, okay. Well, this is an important thing. We'll get questions, potentially. And we need to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and that we do have low incidence in some of these and why we do that. So it just is an FYI.
Now we have the answers.
Dr. Allen, I think in the past, this report showed a lot of single-digit classes that were low single digits. And I think the 11, 12s, 13s, and 14s kind of speak to what Joe and Carrie were saying about, overflow. And that makes sense, and to be able to offer kids opportunities. So there's definitely an argument for not worrying about the class, below class size.
And I think, especially maybe for new members, want to point out that a class, we don't hire a teacher to teach a class of 6 kids. We're not bringing teachers in and say, hey, we need you to teach these 8 kids and we're going to bring you to, it's the teacher is teaching a whole, number of classes. It's not
full load
as a class.
also, yes. Okay, any other comments or questions? You don't have anything else for us?
I just want to, not for you, but I just want to say thanks to the administrators who are here with us. And I didn't know if they obviously had anything they wanted to add about any of our discussions. But for 1 second, if you'll humor me, I want to go back to the early literacy. So when Joe was talking about implementation of new curriculum, and you were looking at that K1, 2, 3, 4, 5 data, and you noticed we had really great gains in K1 and 2, and we were slower in 3, 4, 5, 6. Not only is it more challenging, but I want you to remember we implemented a new curriculum. That new curriculum is really, and a new approach to teaching reading. Our focus and the administrator's focus has been on implementing the science of reading with our students so that they gain those foundational skills so that they can be more successful as they get older. Don't forget, not only did COVID impact our students, but they did not necessarily have that teaching approach, that curriculum, and that philosophy. So one of the reasons I had asked Joe to make sure we included this in this slide deck is because we are really optimistic that we are changing the tides for our students, and you're going to start seeing better achievement, and we're not going to have these Debbie Downer MCAS discussions. We're going to say not only are they having all these great experiences, they're also doing awesome on MCAS. We really do believe the magic happens together. So I just want to throw that plug in there and thank our administrators because they sit through more data meetings than you could shake a stick at and enjoy them.
Well, that's probably half right.
Do we have to vote on those numbers or no?
No, it's FYI, and then we'll tell in the report. It's next Thursday, right?
Yes.
I just pass on to the full school committee that we reviewed the low incidence courses, and we agreed that they should run.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion.
And to vote on everything.
I know.
Okay, done. See you people
Someone gonna.
in a month.
Second,
Yeah.
I thought Dave, I didn't want to.
Peggy raised her hand.
Okay,
Credit.
I'll be third.